It started with a tense private gathering that was never supposed to become public. Behind palace walls, where carefully crafted smiles often conceal bitter rivalries, a confrontation unfolded that would shake the royal household to its core. What began as quiet whispers about growing tension between Queen Camilla and Princess Catherine soon erupted into something far more dangerous. And when King Charles learned the full extent of what had been happening behind closed doors, everything changed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, the rumors seemed no different from the countless stories that regularly circle the monarchy. Palace observers had heard whispers before. They had seen reports of disagreements, competing priorities, and occasional tensions among senior royals. Yet this felt different. The conversations taking place behind closed doors carried an unusual urgency, and those who worked closest to the family could sense it. Something was shifting beneath the surface of the institution. Something that could no longer be dismissed as routine palace gossip. The first signs reportedly appeared during a series of recent royal engagements. On the surface, everything seemed perfectly normal. Public appearances continued. Official duties were carried out. Statements were issued with the same polished language that has long defined royal communications. Yet insiders began noticing moments that felt strangely uncomfortable. Small interactions that lasted only seconds. Conversations that ended abruptly when certain individuals entered the room. Glances that seemed to carry far more meaning than anyone was willing to acknowledge publicly. As weeks passed, those observations became increasingly difficult to ignore. Senior aides who had spent years navigating royal dynamics reportedly started expressing quiet concern. Several individuals were said to have witnessed exchanges between Queen Camilla and Princess Catherine that felt unusually tense. Nothing explosive. Nothing that could immediately trigger a public scandal, but enough to create growing unease among people who understood the importance of maintaining unity at the highest levels of the monarchy. What made the situation even more intriguing was Catherine's response. Despite mounting speculation, she refused to address any of the rumors publicly. She continued carrying out her duties with remarkable discipline. There were no complaints, no interviews, no attempts to defend herself. The silence, however, only intensified public curiosity. The more Catherine remained composed, the more people began wondering what she might be enduring behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Prince William reportedly became increasingly protective. Those closest to the royal household noticed subtle changes in his behavior. He appeared more attentive, more watchful, and far less willing to tolerate situations that could place additional pressure on his wife. While neither William nor Catherine offered any public indication of conflict, many observers sensed that the future king understood far more about the situation than anyone outside palace walls. The most startling aspect of the entire affair was that King Charles himself may not have fully understood how serious the conflict had become. At the time, the king remained heavily focused on both his constitutional responsibilities and his personal health challenges. His attention was divided across countless issues demanding immediate consideration. According to palace insiders, that created an environment where tensions could quietly grow without immediately reaching his desk in their full form. By then, concerns had reportedly been building for months. What began as isolated incidents slowly transformed into a pattern. Advisors started comparing notes. Courtiers exchanged observations. Trusted staff members became increasingly worried that a private disagreement was evolving into something capable of damaging the delicate balance within the royal family. Yet even then, many believed the matter could still be contained. That assumption would not survive for long. Because once the first details began leaking beyond palace walls, the story took on a life of its own. Royal correspondents started hearing fragments of information. Trusted media figures received carefully worded tips. Questions that had once been whispered in private circles suddenly began appearing in public discussions. And with every new revelation, pressure mounted on those determined to keep the truth hidden. But as whispers turned into documented accounts, the palace faced a troubling question. How long had this feud been hidden from the king himself? For years, the public saw unity. Handshakes, appearances, and carefully staged moments suggested harmony within the monarchy. Yet behind those polished images, insiders claim a silent battle for influence was unfolding, one that placed Catherine and Camilla on opposing sides of an increasingly fragile royal balance. As questions surrounding the alleged feud continued spreading through royal circles, attention gradually shifted toward a deeper issue. This was no longer being viewed as a simple disagreement between two senior women within the royal household. According to those familiar with the situation, the conflict was becoming symbolic of something much larger. At its heart stood two very different positions within the monarchy, each carrying its own expectations, responsibilities, and vision for the future. Catherine occupied a unique place in that future. As the Princess of Wales and the future Queen Consort, her role represented the next chapter of the monarchy itself. Every public appearance, every charitable initiative, and every carefully considered decision seemed to reinforce her growing importance. Over time, many observers began noticing that Catherine was no longer viewed merely as Prince William's wife. She had become a central figure in her own right, one whose influence appeared to expand with each passing year. Camilla's position, however, was rooted in the present rather than the future. As queen, she held a respected and significant role alongside King Charles. Yet, some insiders reportedly believed that changing public dynamics were creating an uncomfortable reality. While Catherine's prominence continued rising, attention that once naturally flowed toward Camilla appeared increasingly divided. In an institution where influence often depends as much on perception as position, that shift was impossible to ignore. Reports soon emerged suggesting disagreements over royal priorities. According to various palace sources, differing opinions began surfacing regarding charitable projects, public engagements, and broader strategic decisions. None of these disputes were publicly acknowledged, but insiders claimed they reflected competing views about how the monarchy should present itself during a period of significant transition. What may have started as professional differences gradually evolved into something far more personal. Behind the scenes, palace staff reportedly found themselves navigating increasingly delicate relationships. Individuals loyal to different senior royals were said to have formed quiet alliances. These were not dramatic confrontations or openly declared factions. Instead, they emerged through private conversations, competing recommendations, and subtle efforts to advance particular viewpoints. As a result, tensions that might once have been resolved quickly became far more complicated. At the center of everything stood Catherine's extraordinary popularity. Public approval for the Princess of Wales continued strengthening, despite ongoing speculation surrounding the royal family. Many supporters viewed her as a stabilizing figure during uncertain times. Others saw her as a bridge between tradition and modern expectations. Whatever the reason, her growing connection with the public only seemed to reinforce her influence within royal circles. That development reportedly created increasing concern among those worried about shifting balances of power. Some insiders suggested that Camilla became increasingly aware of how rapidly circumstances were changing. For years, she had worked to establish her place within the institution. Now observers claimed she was watching attention gradually move toward the next generation. Whether those concerns were justified or exaggerated hardly mattered. What mattered was the growing perception that a struggle was quietly taking shape beneath the surface. Senior advisors reportedly recognized the risks. Efforts were allegedly made to ease tensions before they could escalate further. Meetings were held. Discussions took place. Trusted figures attempted to preserve unity and prevent disagreements from becoming public controversies. Yet, despite those efforts, the underlying issues refused to disappear. Meanwhile, King Charles remained largely focused on matters demanding his immediate attention. His health concerns continued attracting significant scrutiny, while constitutional responsibilities required constant engagement. Faced with those challenges, the king reportedly relied heavily on those around him to maintain stability throughout the institution. Few could have anticipated that while his attention remained fixed elsewhere, tensions were quietly approaching a breaking point. For a time, it seemed possible that the entire situation would remain hidden behind palace walls. The monarchy had weathered countless internal disagreements before, and many believed this would be no different. But beneath the carefully maintained calm, pressures continued building, private frustrations deepened, misunderstandings multiplied, and eventually, according to insiders, a single moment would change everything. Yet the struggle might have remained hidden forever if one private incident had not crossed a line that palace officials could no longer ignore. Then came the moment insiders now describe as the turning point. A private disagreement, once confined to palace corridors, allegedly escalated into a confrontation so serious that multiple witnesses were forced to document what they had seen. For months, rumors had drifted through royal circles like distant thunder, warning that something significant was building beneath the carefully maintained calm of palace life. Advisors had attempted to ease tensions. Senior staff had worked tirelessly to preserve harmony. Public appearances continued as expected. Yet beneath that surface, frustrations were reportedly reaching a level that could no longer be contained. What happened next would transform quiet speculation into a full-scale royal crisis. According to insiders, the incident occurred during what was expected to be a routine, private discussion involving senior members of the household. Such meetings were hardly unusual. Differences of opinion had always existed within the monarchy. Disagreements were often resolved behind closed doors, far away from public scrutiny. But this particular exchange allegedly followed a very different path. Sources familiar with the matter claim that discussions quickly became unusually tense. What began as a disagreement over priorities reportedly evolved into something much more personal. Long-standing frustrations that had remained hidden for months suddenly surfaced. Words that may never have been intended for public knowledge were allegedly exchanged. Individuals present reportedly sensed almost immediately that a line had been crossed. The significance of that moment was not necessarily the disagreement itself. The monarchy had survived countless internal disputes throughout its long history. What alarmed those present was the intensity of the confrontation and the apparent breakdown of the restraint that normally governs interactions at the highest levels of royal life. Several senior aides reportedly left the meeting deeply concerned about what they had witnessed. As details circulated privately among palace officials, concern quickly turned into alarm. Internal summaries were reportedly prepared. Observations were documented. Conversations took place among trusted advisors who recognized the potential consequences if the situation continued escalating. For many, the issue was no longer about personalities. It had become a question of institutional stability. The reports that followed painted an increasingly troubling picture. Witnesses allegedly described an atmosphere unlike anything they had experienced in recent years. Accounts varied in their details, but they shared a common theme. The relationship between Catherine and Camilla appeared to have reached a dangerous crossroads. The fragile balance that advisors had spent months trying to preserve suddenly looked far more vulnerable than anyone had imagined. As those accounts reached senior levels of the household, concern spread rapidly. Advisors who had previously hoped the matter could be resolved quietly began reconsidering that assumption. Every new report seemed to reinforce the belief that the conflict was becoming impossible to ignore. What had once existed only as whispered speculation was now supported by multiple individuals describing remarkably similar concerns. Eventually, word reached Prince William. According to insiders, William's reaction was immediate. Those close to the future king reportedly claim he viewed the situation as far more serious than many had initially realized. For months, he had remained focused on supporting Catherine while avoiding unnecessary public controversy. But the reports now arriving before him suggested that the situation had entered entirely new territory. Protecting his family was no longer simply a personal priority. It had become a matter deeply connected to the future stability of the monarchy itself. Behind the scenes, urgent efforts were reportedly launched to contain the fallout. Advisors understood the dangers of allowing sensitive information to escape palace walls. Discussions intensified regarding how the matter should be handled. Some believed discretion remained possible. Others feared the situation had already progressed too far. Every passing day seemed to increase the risk of exposure. Then came the leaks. At first, they appeared only as fragments. Small details surfaced among trusted royal correspondents. Commentators began referencing unusual tensions inside the household. Journalists who had spent years covering the monarchies started hearing similar stories from different sources. No one possessed the complete picture, but enough information was emerging to raise serious questions. As public curiosity grew, the story developed a momentum of its own. Every attempt to contain it appeared only to generate additional speculation. Royal observers debated the significance of the reports. Commentators examined every recent appearance for clues. The more palace officials tried to maintain silence, the louder the rumors became. Soon, what had started as a private confrontation transformed into one of the most closely watched royal controversies in recent memory. And with each new account that surfaced, pressure continued building behind palace walls. Advisors demanded answers. Observers demanded clarity. Insiders demanded action. The institution could no longer rely on silence alone. As evidence accumulated and accounts multiplied, the question was no longer whether something had happened, but whether the king would be forced to act. King Charles had spent years trying to preserve stability within the royal family. but now he found himself trapped between loyalty to his wife and responsibility to the institution he had sworn to protect. As reports continued spreading through royal circles, the crisis entered a far more dangerous phase. What had once been viewed as a private disagreement was now becoming a direct challenge to the unity of the monarchy itself. Palace officials were no longer debating whether tensions existed. The discussion had shifted toward a far more urgent question. How much damage had already been done, and could it still be contained before the situation spiraled beyond control? For King Charles, the dilemma was deeply personal. Throughout his reign, he had repeatedly emphasized the importance of stability, continuity, and duty. He understood better than anyone that public trust in the monarchy depended on its ability to project unity during times of uncertainty. Yet now, according to insiders, that unity was being tested from within. The conflict reportedly involved two of the most important women in the royal household, placing the king in an impossible position. As pressure mounted, Charles reportedly began receiving detailed briefings from senior advisors. Reports, summaries, and witness accounts were brought before him. Individuals who had observed the growing tensions shared their concerns. Others provided their own interpretations of events. Each conversation added another piece to a puzzle that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. At first, however, the situation was far from clear. Different accounts reportedly painted different pictures. Some advisors believed the conflict had been exaggerated by palace gossip. Others argued that misunderstandings had been transformed into something far larger through speculation and rumor. The king, known for carefully weighing information before reaching conclusions, reportedly approached the matter with caution. He understood that acting too quickly could create new problems. But doing nothing carried risks of its own. For a brief period, uncertainty dominated the discussion. Charles reportedly listened to competing perspectives while attempting to separate fact from emotion. Yet as additional testimony emerged, the picture began changing. New accounts allegedly supported earlier concerns. Witnesses who had spoken independently described remarkably similar patterns. Reports that once appeared isolated now seemed connected. The accumulation of evidence reportedly left many senior figures deeply troubled. According to palace insiders, the king's greatest concern was not merely the disagreement itself. Royal families, like all families, experience conflict. What worried him was the potential impact on the institution. The monarchy was already navigating significant challenges. Public confidence, national expectations, and the future transition of leadership all demanded careful management. A prolonged internal feud involving senior royals threatened to undermine that stability at exactly the wrong moment. As concerns intensified, advisors reportedly became increasingly direct. Several senior figures allegedly warned that silence was no longer a sustainable strategy. The issue had already escaped private circles and entered public discussion. Every new leak generated fresh headlines. Every rumor invited further speculation. Waiting for the controversy to disappear on its own was becoming less realistic with each passing day. Meanwhile, Catherine continued carrying out her duties with remarkable discipline. Despite intense scrutiny and growing public fascination with the unfolding controversy, she remained focused on her responsibilities. Supporters praised her composure. Observers noted her refusal to engage in public disputes. Rather than fueling the drama, she appeared determined to maintain the image of stability expected from a future queen. That contrast only increased public sympathy. At the same time, Prince William reportedly became more convinced that stronger action would eventually be necessary. According to those familiar with internal discussions, he believed the situation had reached a stage where protecting the institution required more than private conversations. While remaining respectful of the king's authority, William allegedly supported efforts aimed at restoring order before the crisis caused lasting damage. With every passing day, the pressure surrounding Charles intensified. Advisors sought direction, courtiers awaited decisions, media scrutiny continued growing. What had started as whispers behind palace walls had evolved into a challenge demanding leadership at the highest level. The king could feel expectations closing in from every direction. The monarchy had reached a crossroads. One path offered continued uncertainty, risking further leaks and deeper divisions. The other required a difficult decision that could alter relationships within the royal household for years to come. Neither option was painless, neither offered guarantees. But as more reports arrived and concern continued spreading through the institution, the possibility of avoiding a decision altogether slowly disappeared. The moment many had hoped to prevent was now approaching, and when the king finally reached his conclusion, The decision would send shockwaves through every level of the royal household. The announcement did not arrive with dramatic speeches or public confrontations. Instead, it emerged through quiet directives, altered schedules, and sudden changes that insiders immediately recognized as unprecedented. For weeks, speculation had surrounded the king's decision. Advisors had delivered their briefings. Witness accounts had been reviewed. Concerns about the monarchy's reputation had reached the highest levels of the institution. Behind closed doors, pressure had steadily mounted until a response became unavoidable. Yet when that response finally arrived, it did not come in the form many had expected. There was no public statement addressing the controversy directly. No carefully staged appearance designed to settle the growing storm. Instead, the palace chose a far quieter path, one that would ultimately prove far more revealing. The first signs appeared almost unnoticed. Royal schedules, normally planned with remarkable precision, reportedly began changing in subtle but unmistakable ways. Engagements that observers expected to feature Queen Camilla suddenly proceeded without her involvement. Invitations were adjusted. Appearances were reassigned. Events that had once seemed routine now carried an air of mystery because one familiar name was no longer attached to them. At first, some dismissed the changes as coincidence. After all, schedules evolve constantly within the royal household. Responsibilities shift. Priorities change. Yet, as more adjustments emerged, even experienced royal watchers began questioning whether something larger was taking place. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. According to insiders, reports quickly spread that Camilla had been quietly removed from several public responsibilities. No formal explanation accompanied these developments. No detailed clarification was offered. But those who followed the monarchy closely recognized that the changes appeared unusually significant. The absence of official confirmation only intensified the curiosity surrounding them. Behind palace walls, staff reportedly received new instructions regarding future engagements. Details remained closely guarded, but insiders suggested that planning procedures had changed in noticeable ways. Individuals responsible for organizing appearances allegedly found themselves working under updated guidance. What exactly those instructions contained remained unclear. Yet their impact was becoming visible through the steady reshaping of the royal calendar. As those changes accumulated, royal observers began noticing something even more striking. Protocol itself appeared to be shifting. The monarchy operates according to traditions that often change slowly, sometimes over decades rather than weeks. For that reason, even minor adjustments can attract enormous attention. According to several commentators, recent developments suggested that established routines were being quietly reconsidered. The implications of such changes immediately fueled fresh speculation. Senior courtiers reportedly viewed the situation as highly significant. While few were willing to speak publicly, insiders claimed many understood the message being sent. Actions that might appear administrative on the surface often carry deeper meaning within royal institutions. The removal of responsibilities, the reassignment of appearances, and the adjustment of schedules can communicate far more than any public announcement ever could. Before long, public speculation reached new levels. Questions flooded royal commentary programs. Newspaper columns explored possible explanations. Online discussions expanded rapidly as observers attempted to understand what was happening behind palace walls. Every missing appearance generated new theories. Every schedule change inspired fresh debate. The more silence the palace maintained, the louder the public conversation became. At the center of that discussion stood one increasingly unavoidable question. What did all of this mean for Camilla's future role? For years, her position within the monarchy had appeared secure. She had navigated immense public scrutiny and gradually established herself within the institution. Yet now, according to many observers, uncertainty surrounded her standing as never before. Some believed the changes were temporary. Others suspected they reflected a much deeper shift. Without official answers, speculation continued filling the void. The palace, however, refused to elaborate. Requests for clarification reportedly received little response. Public statements remained carefully limited. Advisors avoided discussing internal matters. Officials appeared determined to prevent further escalation by offering as little information as possible. Yet that strategy produced an unintended consequence. Every unanswered question created two new ones. As a result, what had begun as a private feud transformed into something much larger. The king's decision had altered more than schedules and responsibilities. It had changed perceptions, it had shifted expectations, and most importantly, It had signaled that the crisis which once existed only in whispers had now reached the very center of royal authority. But the consequences of the king's decision were only beginning to unfold, and its impact would reach far beyond a single royal dispute. Within days, the effects of the decision could be felt throughout the royal establishment. Relationships shifted, alliances were tested, and long-standing assumptions about power inside the monarchy suddenly seemed uncertain. The king's decision had been delivered quietly, but its impact was anything but quiet. What initially appeared to be a series of administrative adjustments soon revealed itself as something far more significant. Across the royal household, people were reassessing positions, questioning assumptions, and attempting to understand what the future might now hold. The atmosphere that followed was not one of resolution. It was one of uncertainty. A chapter had closed, but a far more complicated one had just begun. Inside palace circles, reactions reportedly emerged almost immediately. Advisors, courtiers, and staff members found themselves interpreting the king's action through very different lenses. Some viewed the decision as a necessary step to restore stability. Others privately questioned whether the consequences might extend further than anyone anticipated. Regardless of personal opinions, few could deny that a major shift had occurred. Supporters of Catherine reportedly saw the development as a powerful turning point. For months, they had watched her endure intense scrutiny while maintaining public composure. She had continued her duties without engaging in public disputes, even as speculation surrounded her. To many observers, the king's actions appeared to validate that approach. The perception quickly emerged that Catherine's patience had been rewarded, while others faced increasing questions about their conduct. That interpretation spread rapidly. Commentators began discussing Catherine not simply as the Princess of Wales, but as the future face of the monarchy. Her growing popularity with the public suddenly seemed more significant than ever. What had once been viewed as personal admiration was increasingly framed as political strength within the institution. Every appearance, every engagement, and every public interaction reinforced the belief that her influence was continuing to expand. Meanwhile, reports suggested that Camilla's allies were struggling to fully grasp the scale of what had happened. Some reportedly believed the adjustments would prove temporary. Others expected a clarification that would restore previous arrangements. Yet as days passed and no such reversal emerged, uncertainty deepened. Questions that once seemed unthinkable were now being openly discussed within royal circles. The situation quickly attracted enormous attention across the United Kingdom. Media coverage intensified as journalists attempted to piece together the evolving story. Royal commentators analyzed every development. Newspapers devoted extensive attention to the apparent changes taking place behind palace walls. Television panels debated the implications. Online discussions expanded at remarkable speed. The controversy had moved far beyond insider conversations and become a subject of national fascination. As public interest grew, sympathy increasingly appeared to favor Catherine. Many observers viewed her as someone who had remained focused on service despite extraordinary pressure. Her refusal to engage publicly in the controversy strengthened that perception. While speculation continued to swirl around the dispute itself, Catherine's image seemed largely untouched by the turmoil. If anything, many believed her standing had become even stronger. That growing support naturally led to broader questions about the monarchy's future. Observers began examining what these developments might mean for the years ahead. Discussions about leadership, succession, and long-term influence became increasingly common. The spotlight gradually shifted away from the feud itself and toward the institution that would ultimately outlast it. In that sense, the controversy had become about much more than a disagreement between individuals. It was becoming a conversation about the direction of the crown. For King Charles, the consequences were particularly complex. His authority had, in some ways, been reinforced. By taking action, he demonstrated a willingness to confront a difficult situation rather than avoid it. Supporters argued that he had fulfilled his responsibility to protect the institution. Yet the very need for intervention also highlighted the seriousness of the divisions that had emerged under his reign. As a result, his leadership was simultaneously strengthened and scrutinized. Behind the scenes, tensions reportedly remained unresolved. The decision may have altered responsibilities and changed public perceptions, but it did not instantly erase months of distrust, frustration, and uncertainty. Those underlying issues continued lingering beneath the surface, creating a sense that the story was far from over. Many insiders privately suspected that the most important consequences had not yet become visible. What the public was witnessing represented only the immediate fallout. The deeper changes were still unfolding quietly within the institution itself, beyond the reach of headlines and speculation. Yet while the public focused on immediate fallout, insiders claim a much larger transformation was already taking shape behind the scenes. As controversy engulfed the palace, one figure remained remarkably composed. Catherine neither celebrated nor retaliated. Yet many observers believed the events had quietly elevated her, standing more than any official title ever could. While debates continued across newspapers, television programs, and royal commentary circles, Catherine maintained the same approach she had followed from the beginning. She did not address the rumors. She did not respond to speculation. She did not attempt to shape the public narrative in her favor. Instead, she continued fulfilling her responsibilities with a calm determination that many found impossible to ignore. In a period defined by uncertainty and division, her consistency became one of the most discussed aspects of the entire controversy. For supporters, that restraint spoke volumes. The royal household had spent months navigating one of its most uncomfortable internal disputes in recent memory. Public attention remained fixed on shifting alliances, changing responsibilities, and questions surrounding the future. Yet throughout the turmoil, Catherine appeared focused on the role she believed mattered most: service. Every engagement she attended seemed to reinforce the image of someone determined not to be distracted by the noise surrounding her. As a result, perceptions began changing. What had once been viewed as the steady progress of a future queen increasingly started looking like the emergence of a central figure within the monarchy's next chapter. Royal observers noted that Catherine's influence was no longer measured solely by official rank or ceremonial responsibilities. Instead, it was being shaped by public trust. And in moments of institutional uncertainty, trust often becomes one of the most valuable forms of power. Reports suggested that public approval reached remarkable levels during this period. Commentators repeatedly pointed to Catherine's ability to remain composed under pressure. While others became subjects of controversy, she appeared untouched by the drama itself. That contrast only strengthened her reputation. The more turbulent the situation became, the more her stability seemed to stand out. At the same time, William and Catherine continued presenting a united front. Those closest to royal affairs frequently described them as increasingly aligned in both purpose and public image. Rather than allowing the controversy to create visible cracks, they appeared more connected than ever. Their partnership became a symbol of continuity at a moment when continuity felt especially important. For many observers, they represented the future the monarchy was steadily moving toward, regardless of the challenges unfolding in the present. Behind palace walls, that perception reportedly carried significant weight. According to insiders, conversations among staff increasingly focused on the future rather than the immediate crisis. Attention gradually shifted toward what the next reign might look like. Individuals who had spent years working within the institution reportedly recognized that a generational transition was approaching, even if it had not yet formally arrived. In those discussions, Catherine's role seemed larger than ever before. Comparisons inevitably followed. Royal commentators began drawing parallels between Catherine and some of the most admired women in modern royal history. Supporters praised her discipline, her patience, and her ability to endure scrutiny without public complaint. Whether those comparisons were entirely fair or not, they reflected a growing belief that her position within the monarchy had evolved. She was no longer simply preparing for a future role. Many felt she was already embodying it. Meanwhile, the institution itself appeared to be adapting. The balance of influence inside the monarchy is rarely static. It changes gradually through public sentiment, internal relationships, and shifting expectations. According to observers, recent events had accelerated that process. New realities were emerging. New priorities were forming. The controversy that had begun as a private feud was now influencing broader discussions about leadership, authority, and the monarchy's direction in the years ahead. Yet as Catherine's standing appeared to strengthen, uncertainty continued surrounding Camilla's future. Questions persisted regarding her role, her responsibilities, and her place within an institution that seemed to be entering a new phase. Supporters remained hopeful that stability could eventually return. Critics continued examining every development for signs of deeper change. The lack of clear answers only fueled additional speculation. Even as the immediate controversy began losing some of its intensity, the larger implications remained impossible to ignore. What had unfolded over recent months had reshaped perceptions, altered expectations, and revealed tensions that could no longer be hidden. The monarchy had weathered the storm, but it had not emerged unchanged. And as the dust slowly settled, attention turned toward the lasting legacy this extraordinary conflict would leave behind. Royal scandals often fade with time, but some become defining chapters in the history of the crown. Insiders believe this feud may ultimately be remembered not for the conflict itself, but for the dramatic shift in power that followed. As the controversy gradually moved out of daily headlines, a broader picture began to emerge. The story was no longer simply about rumors, disagreements, or palace tensions. It had become a moment of transformation. Looking back, many royal observers would argue that the true significance of the feud was not the conflict itself, but what it revealed about the monarchy's future. Beneath the public drama, deeper changes had been taking place. Changes that would continue influencing the institution long after the immediate controversy had faded from public attention. One of the clearest consequences was the way palace dynamics appeared to shift. For years, certain assumptions had guided discussions about influence within the royal household. Roles seemed established, hierarchies appeared fixed. Yet the events of recent months demonstrated how quickly those assumptions could change. Relationships evolved, expectations adjusted. Individuals once viewed as central figures found themselves facing new uncertainties, while others emerged with greater authority than ever before. King Charles stood at the center of that transformation. His decision had not satisfied everyone. Critics questioned the timing. Supporters praised the resolve. Yet regardless of opinion, few could deny that the king had ultimately chosen action over hesitation. In doing so, he reshaped perceptions of his leadership. For some, he demonstrated a willingness to place institutional stability above personal comfort. For others, he showed that even the most difficult decisions could not be postponed forever when the future of the monarchy was at stake. At the same time, Catherine emerged from the crisis stronger than she had entered it. What made her rise so remarkable was that it occurred without dramatic statements or public confrontations. While others became consumed by controversy, she remained focused on duty. That consistency strengthened her image in ways no carefully planned campaign ever could. Public admiration grew, trust deepened, and many observers concluded that her position as a future queen had become more secure than ever before. Yet where one figure appeared strengthened, another faced increasing uncertainty. Questions surrounding Camilla's future role continued lingering long after the immediate controversy began, fading. Supporters hoped that stability and clarity would eventually return. Critics wondered whether recent events represented a temporary setback or a lasting change. The absence of definitive answers ensured that speculation would continue. What once seemed certain now appeared far less predictable. Meanwhile, attention increasingly shifted toward Prince William. Throughout the controversy, his presence had often remained in the background. Yet many insiders believed the future king's influence had quietly grown throughout the entire ordeal. His support for Catherine, his focus on stability, and his apparent concern for the institution's future all reinforced the perception that he would play a central role in shaping the monarchy's next chapter. For many observers, the crisis served as an early glimpse of the leadership style that could eventually define a future reign. The monarchy itself also appeared to be adapting. Every institution faces moments that force reflection and change. This controversy became one of those moments. Officials reportedly focused on restoring stability, rebuilding trust, and ensuring that similar divisions would not continue undermining the institution. While the process would take time, there was growing recognition that the crown had entered a new phase. The lessons learned during this period would likely influence decisions for years to come. In the end, the lasting story was never about individual victories or defeats. It was about something larger. It was about legacy. It was about duty. It was about the responsibilities that accompany positions of extraordinary influence. The personalities involved captured public attention, but the deeper questions concerned the future of the monarchy itself. Long after the headlines disappear and the speculation fades, the consequences of this chapter may still be felt within palace walls. Because some controversies leave behind more than memories. They leave behind new realities. They alter expectations, they redefine relationships, and they quietly shape the future before anyone fully realizes it. Because in the end, this was never simply a disagreement between two royal women. It became a defining test of loyalty, authority, and the future direction of the monarchy itself. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.